Today, I'm going to introduce you to Wade Wilson. Not the Deadpool character, but the real Wade Wilson. His birth was not an occasion of joy, but rather a moment fraught with complexity and concern. Wade's mother was a mere 14 years old at the time of his birth, and his father only a year older at 15.
Wade's biological mother, who is now 15, had already been struggling with several mental health issues, some of which were hereditary. However, it seems that her issues worsened because she was using substances at that age, and things like medication and drugs contributed to her mental health deteriorating further.
Wade's parents were in no condition, neither emotionally nor due to their young age, to raise Wade or even consider marriage, to say, okay, we're having a child, let's get married. So it was decided that they wouldn't keep the baby but would give him up for adoption to another family. His parents, understanding their incapacity to provide a stable and nurturing environment, chose to place Wade in the care of another family. That's how Wade ended up being adopted by a sweet and kind family in their town, known as the Wilson family. Wade's biological mother knew them from the local church. They would see each other regularly there. Since Wade's mom, being only 15, could think of no one else better suited to raise Wade than the Wilsons, she chose them. The Wilson family consisted of Candy and Steve Wilson, and they happily and warmly adopted Wade. From that point on, Wade grew up as Wade Wilson, alongside two sisters who were the biological children of the Wilson family. Wade's childhood was completely normal. He did well in school, had friends, was active socially, and was even part of the sports team. From a young age, he showed a lot of interest in sports, and every Sunday he would go to church with his adoptive parents. They always saw Wade as a child with a lot of potential, believing he could have a bright future since he was a completely normal kid. However, when Wade turned 13 and entered his teenage years, he began to show signs of mental health issues. This was the same age his biological mother started experiencing similar problems. His mother had been battling her mental health since she was 15, and the same thing started happening to Wade. He went from being a normal child to becoming aggressive and paranoid. Wade became obsessed with conspiracy theories and believed that something terrible was going to happen to his family or that a huge danger was threatening them. No one could understand where he was getting these ideas from. Eventually, Wade reached a point where he didn't want to leave the house anymore, avoided interacting much with his friends and family, and was constantly angry. Over time, he became convinced that an alien was watching over his family and that they were soon going to attack and kill his mother. Every morning, when his adoptive mother, Candy, was in the kitchen cooking breakfast for the family, Wade would rush downstairs every morning, stressed and in a hurry, pulling all the curtains closed. He would say, "They can see us. Didn't I tell you not to leave the curtains open? Didn't I say they're watching us?" Every morning his mother had to sit him down and explain, "No one is watching us. Please stop doing this every morning. I'm up making breakfast, and every day you come downstairs thinking we're about to be kidnapped." In response, Wade would get angry with his mother, saying, "I'm trying to protect the family, but you just don't understand."
One day, Wade told his father there was a bomb in the basement, and it was going to explode soon, killing all of them. Up to this point, no one in the family had taken Wade's claims seriously. But when he told his father about the bomb, his dad thought, maybe we should call the police. The police came and checked the basement. The family was probably worried that Wade, in his paranoid state, might have actually planted something down there himself, forgetting he did it, or perhaps he believed someone else had put it there. So, to be safe, they decided to involve the authorities. Fortunately, nothing was found in the basement. Over time, Wade also started experiencing depression and anxiety. His family tried to get him professional help, but since he was a rebellious teenager by then, Wade refused to cooperate, saying, "I'm not crazy, I don't need help." Because of this, he wouldn't work with his family's efforts to support him. The medical team that Wade's family wanted to work with found that, over time, Wade was pouring gasoline on the fire of his mental health issues by starting to use substances. He began with some lighter drugs, but quickly escalated to much heavier ones. These substances worsened his depression and anxiety, making him even more aggressive and angry. At school, he would cause trouble and get into fights with other kids in town, and living with him at home became increasingly difficult. Because of this, people began calling the police, reporting the chaos Wade was causing daily. At this point, Wade's family had to invoke the Baker Act, a Florida law established in 1971 that addresses mental health. This law allows families to take action if they feel that a loved one has mental health issues that prevent them from functioning in society and that the person is not likely to seek help on their own. Under this law, families can place their loved one into the care of a medical team. The specialists then have 72 hours to involuntarily admit the person to a hospital for evaluation. During this time, they would conduct tests and analyses to determine the root of the individual's problems. Families don't resort to this law lightly. They usually wait until they have exhausted all other options and know their loved one won't cooperate with doctors willingly. So they called in the Baker Act, and the team had 72 hours to figure out what was wrong with Wade. After this evaluation, they decided on a treatment process, but it seemed that Wade's family utilized the Baker Act without a clear understanding of Wade's specific issues. After those 72 hours of tests and analyses, the specialists concluded that they couldn't provide significant help for him. However, in 2012, when Wade turned 18, more gasoline was added to the fire of his struggles. One day, while playing football, he suffered a severe blow to the head. This wasn't the first skull injury he had encountered. Wade had played in various sports teams throughout his childhood and had taken numerous hits to his head. In addition to these sports-related injuries, Wade once crashed his car into a tree. Since he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, he hit his head on the dashboard. This injury was so serious that doctors told his family that Wade's life was in God's hands. He survived the accident, but a few years later, he had another similar crash, resulting in more head trauma. By this time, Wade was still using substances, which led to several incidents where he overdosed. He even had a seizure due to drug use, which caused even more damage to his brain. At 18, Wade officially dropped out of school and entered the world of crime. He was arrested multiple times for different offences, once for breaking and entering, another time for fraud, again for theft, and even for violent attacks against children. His family helped him during his initial arrests, believing he was too young to face serious consequences for his actions. Each time he was arrested, they hired a lawyer, managing to prove his innocence in court, allowing him to avoid jail time. During this period, Wade reconnected with his biological father, Stephen, who was now about 35 years old. There was only a 16-year age difference between them. Wade and Stephen began to rebuild their relationship. Although Wade and Stephen didn't get very close, Stephen remained in Wade's life as his biological father. Wade sometimes tried to get money from him, thinking that having two fathers gave him an advantage. However, Stephen didn't have much money to give. As time passed, Wade entered his early 20s and had many short romantic relationships. During this time, Stephen had a daughter. Wade was often violent in his relationships, hitting his partners and trying to trick them. His charm made it easy for people to fall for his tricks. In 2015, Wade met a woman at a party and invited her to his car to smoke marijuana. But once they were in the car, Wade became aggressive. He ordered the woman to sit in the back seat. When she tried to stand up for herself, saying he had no right to give her orders, he attacked her. Wade choked her, threatening to shoot her if she didn't obey. He then took her phone and assaulted her, filming everything with her own device, believing he wouldn't be stopped. The woman reported the incident to the police and took the case to court, thinking she had strong evidence against Wade. She believed he would go to prison. But during the trial, Wade claimed that their encounter was consensual and that the woman liked rough sex. In the end, he was found not guilty. In 2018, Wade went to prison again for another crime. There he met Brian Winchester, who was in prison for trying to kidnap his wife, Denise Williams. There was some drama between Brian and Denise, which is why he was incarcerated. Wade learned about Brian's situation and offered to kill Denise for him once he got out of prison. Wade and Brian discussed their plan, but the prison guards caught wind of it and it became part of their case files. At this point, Wade hadn't killed anyone yet, but his name was now linked to a murder plot. By late 2018, Wade was 24 years old and had been released from prison. He started a new relationship with a woman named Kelly, whom he met on a dating site in Florida. They hit it off, attended parties together, and eventually moved in together after several dates. Initially, Wade seemed like the perfect guy to Kelly. She didn't notice any red flags. Wade lied about many things, including his name. He said his middle name was Stephen, and his past, claiming he had no children and had never used drugs. In reality, Wade was not only addicted to drugs, but also sold them. After living together for 6 months, Wade got arrested again in January 2019 for stealing and selling stolen items. When he got out of jail, he returned to Kelly, who made excuses for his behavior because she liked him so much. She thought stealing wasn't a serious crime, believing anyone could be in a tough situation. Down the road, Wade started using drugs in front of Kelly. She had little experience with drugs, only having smoked marijuana once during her teenage years, which made her paranoid. So she didn't recognize Wade's addiction at first. Eventually, while searching the house, she found a tool that looked like it was for drug use. Unsure, she took a picture and posted it on Reddit to ask what it was for. The responses confirmed her suspicions. It was used for drug consumption. That's when Kelly realized Wade was truly addicted to drugs. After 6 months of living together, the relationship between Wade and Kelly gets worse. Kelly discovers Wade's lies and addiction, and their arguments become more intense. One day, Kelly grabs Wade's backpack to check if he has any drugs. Wade notices and gets angry, breaking down the door to attack Kelly. This is their first physical fight, with Kelly throwing a table at Wade in fear, and Wade threatening to kill her dog if she continues. From this point on, Wade no longer hides anything and starts isolating Kelly from her friends and family. He takes control of every aspect of Kelly's life, stealing money from her and cheating on her. One day, Wade and one of Kelly's friends steal a lot of her belongings, including her gun, and flee to Texas. Kelly goes to the police saying her boyfriend stole her gun and warns them that if anyone is killed with it, it's not her fault. Despite all this, Kelly forgives Wade after he pleads with her. Unfortunately, Kelly still has feelings for him and lets him come back. Wade returns and Kelly admits that he was so charming that she would do anything to keep him around. On February 18th, 2019, after 6 months of living together, Wade and Kelly are driving and discussing Wade's promise to go to rehab. Kelly reminds him of his promise, saying she knows he's still using drugs and hasn't made any effort to quit. Wade, however, refuses to go, and their argument escalates. Wade pulls the car over, attacks Kelly, and begins choking her. In the struggle, Kelly's lip is badly cut, and Wade bites her chin, face, and ears. He then pulls out a knife, cutting off Kelly's clothes, ties her hands and feet with her own clothing, stuffs her pantyhose in her mouth to prevent her from screaming, and sexually assaults her in the back seat of the car. After this, Wade picks up Kelly's body and tries to put her in the trunk of the car. While closing the trunk, he accidentally breaks Kelly's leg because her foot was sticking out. Then Wade takes Kelly's phone, sits behind the wheel, and calls his drug dealer, saying he'll be there in about 40 minutes and asking if the dealer has drugs for him. Wade trades Kelly's phone for drugs with his dealer, drives around for a bit, and finally arrives in Florida around 4 a.m. When they get there, Wade opens the trunk and without any remorse tells Kelly that he has a date with another woman. He says he'll untie her and let her go home. After freeing Kelly, she immediately goes to the hospital. The hospital staff documents all her injuries, taking pictures of the cuts on her wrists from being tied up and the bite marks from Wade. They also conduct a rape test, which comes back positive. All of this is recorded as evidence in her case. Kelly then goes to the police to press charges against Wade. When confronted, he claims that Kelly enjoyed the violent treatment and that, like all the other women he had been with, she was into rough, violent relationships. The police tell Kelly that the photos and test results from the hospital are missing and that they cannot be used as evidence in court. They advise her to drop the case, saying it would be hard to prove anything and it would just cost her money. After this incident, Kelly ends the relationship with Wade, realizing it was the only way to save her life. Following Kelly, Wade gets involved with several other women, all of whom he abuses. One strange note in his file mentions that after these women, Wade also had a relationship with a man, during which he stabbed the man. There is no follow-up or further explanation in the file, just this one random sentence, known by her friends as Mila. They were introduced by a mutual friend and soon entered into a serious relationship, moving in together at Mila's place. However, their relationship quickly became toxic. Within the first few weeks, Mila went to the police several times, but they didn't help her. 2 months into their relationship, Wade found some messages on Mila's phone. It's unclear whom the messages were from, but he became furious. He attacked Mila and started choking her until she passed out. After she lost consciousness, Wade let her go and began doing other things. When Mila regained consciousness, she managed to escape the house. A few days later, he attacked her again, choking her until she passed out once more. Mila escaped again. Soon after this, Mila and Wade were driving together when she received more messages on her phone, sparking another argument. Mila was driving, and Wade attacked her while she was behind the wheel. She stopped the car and jumped out, but Wade grabbed her skirt and ripped it. Mila was begging passing cars to help her, but no one stopped. She started running, with Wade chasing after her. He eventually caught up to her, choked her until she passed out, and then tied her up with some cords he found in the car. When Mila regained consciousness, she found herself blindfolded and tied up in the back seat. This time, Wade decided to change things up. He took her to a river where there was an empty boat. He threw her into the boat and sexually assaulted her, telling her that he was doing this to teach her a lesson because she had been making too many mistakes and angering him. Despite this, Mila stayed with Wade after the incident, likely because she had nowhere else to go and felt she couldn't kick him out. However, during another argument while they were driving, Mila managed to escape and went to the police. The police immediately noticed how badly injured she was, with bruised eyes and multiple injuries on her body. They arrested Wade and held him in jail for 3 months on bail. During this time, Wade begged Mila to drop the charges, and eventually she agreed to withdraw her complaint. In October 2019, Wade, now 25, was released from jail and returned to Mila. Just a few days after his release, the tragic events of the current case were set in motion. On October 6, 2019, Wade, Mila, and Mila's friend, Amy, went to a bar called Buddha Lounge. After a few hours, Mila and Amy decided to head home since both had work the next morning. Mila owned a spa business that she had started herself. After some time at the bar, Mila and Amy expressed their desire to go home, but Wade began to argue. He introduced a stranger he had just met as his best friend, Jason, and insisted they all go to Jason's house to continue the party. Mila wanted to return home, especially since Amy was tired and didn't want to go to a stranger's house. Wade, refusing to let them leave, took Mila's car keys and said he wouldn't give them back unless they agreed to take him to Jason's house. Mila responded by saying they would take a taxi home, leaving her car with Wade. So, Mila and Amy called a taxi and went home, while Wade, Jason and Amy continued drinking at the bar. This was when Wade noticed a 35-year-old woman named Kristine Melton, who was there with her friend Stephanie. Kristine and Stephanie had been close friends since high school and did everything together. That night, like many others, they had decided to spend their free time together. Wade approached Kristine and introduced himself as Junior. He and Jason started talking to Kristine and Stephanie, and Wade bought Kristine a drink. Both women found him charming, and they had no issue socializing with him. After the bar closed at 2 a.m., the four of them got into Mila's car, and Jason drove them all back to his place. Once there, they continued drinking and smoking marijuana. Wade and Kristine eventually went into Jason's bedroom to have sex. By 5 a.m., Jason realized that he wanted his space back and asked everyone to leave. Although Wade had acted like they were close friends, Jason had only met him that night at the bar. As the drugs wore off, Jason realized he didn't actually know Wade. Wade, Kristine and Stephanie left Jason's house and got into Mila's car. However, Wade didn't know how to drive a manual transmission, as he was only used to automatic cars. He struggled to reverse the car, cursing at it in frustration. At around 5:30 a.m., they gave up and took a taxi to Kristine's house, leaving Mila's car parked outside Jason's home. When they arrived at Kristine's house, Stephanie, who had a child and responsibilities the next day, said her goodbyes to her lifelong friend Kristine and left. She had to take her child to school and go to work later that day. Wade and Kristine went inside Kristine's house and into her bedroom. They both went to bed, but while Kristine fell asleep, Wade remained awake, watching her. For no apparent reason, Wade decided that he wanted to kill Kristine. He attacked her while she was asleep and strangled her until she died. After killing her, Wade stayed in the house for a while, unsure of what to do with Kristine's body. He thought about calling someone for advice, but then realized he had left his phone at Jason's house. He grabbed Kristine's phone, but it was locked. To unlock it, he held it up to Kristine's face, using her dead body to access the phone. Once unlocked, he called Mila, who was at her friend Amy's house, fast asleep. Wade called her repeatedly, but when Mila didn't answer, he decided to handle things himself. He wrapped Kristine's body in a rug and tried to lift it into the trunk of the car, but he wasn't able to. Frustrated, he left Kristine's body inside the house, got into her car, and fled the scene.
Recognize this?
Yes, that's
And what does it
Kristine.
show?
That's the tattoo on Kristine's leg.
And then I'm also going to have you look quickly at 13. Do you recognize that?
Yes, it's Kristine.
And is that after she had passed?
Yes.
And a permission. First of all, the state would move 10E and 13 into evidence.
To be admitted.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Judge, I would ask that 13 be passed around to the jurors rather than display that one.
Okay.
Around 8 a.m., Mila woke up at Amy's house and noticed several missed calls from an unknown number. At 9 a.m., the same number called again, and this time Mila answered. Wade yelled, "Why didn't you answer my calls?" Mila, still groggy, asked him to bring her car back because she needed to go to work. Wade lied, saying he was on his way driving, when in fact he was driving Kristine's car. Mila, unaware of what had happened, told Wade to meet her at her workplace since she was at Amy's house. Amy worked with Mila at her spa business, so they both headed to work together. When they arrived, they found Wade waiting for them in a car they didn't recognize, not Mila's car. Mila got out of the car and told Amy to stay inside. Mila walked over to Wade and knocked on the driver's side window. Wade rolled down the window and Mila asked, "Where's my car? What's going on?" Wade smirked and told her to get into the car. Mila refused, saying she wouldn't get in. Wade, still sitting in the car, grabbed Mila and tried to pull her in through the window. Mila resisted, using all her strength to stop him from dragging her inside. As they struggled, Wade tore Mila's clothes, pulled out chunks of her hair, and left scratches and bruises all over her arms. Realizing he couldn't pull her in through the window, Wade got out of the car and attacked Mila. Both of them fell to the ground, but in his haste, Wade forgot to put the car in park. As the car began to roll backward, it ran over both Wade and Mila's legs. Despite being hurt, Wade continued his assault. He punched Mila repeatedly in broad daylight, right in front of witnesses. He then started strangling her, trying to choke her to death. Amy was in the car, watching everything happen. When she tried to get out of the car to help Mila, Wade yelled, "If you get out, I'll kill you!" This scared Amy, so she stayed in the car but called the police. He realized he couldn't kill Mila in front of so many people during the day, so he got up and started dragging Mila toward her office, thinking he could kill her inside. To get to the office, they needed to go up a small set of stairs. Mila, knowing the police were probably coming, held tightly to the stair railing. Wade kept hitting Mila, trying to make her let go. He hit her so hard that her nose started bleeding and blood got all over him. Shocked by the blood, Wade stopped for a second, and Mila used this moment to run toward Amy's car. Just then, everyone heard police sirens. Wade quickly got into Kristine's car and drove away. When the police arrived, Mila and the witnesses explained everything that had happened. The police started chasing him, but at that moment, they didn't know he had already killed Kristine. They only knew he tried to kill Mila. Around 9:30 or 10 in the morning, Wade, after fleeing from Mila's office, was wandering the city when he saw a woman walking on the sidewalk. This woman was Diane Ruiz, a 43-year-old who was just on her way to work like any other day. Wade pulled his car next to her and asked for directions. Diane gave him directions, but Wade pretended not to understand and convinced her to get into the car to show him the way, promising to drop her off at her workplace. Once Diane was in the car, Wade drove to a quieter area. When Diane tried to get out of the car, Wade attacked her and started strangling her. Diane passed out, but she was still alive. Wade left her unconscious body in the car and drove to a parking lot nearby, surrounded by trees. Wade knew Diane wasn't dead, so he had the chance to leave her and walk away without killing her. But instead, Wade dragged Diane out of the car, laid her on the ground, and then ran over her multiple times with the car. According to Wade himself, her body turned into spaghetti. After killing Diane, he dumped her body in a wooded area near the parking lot and fled the scene again. He continued driving around the city for several hours until about 3 p.m., when he parked his car in a parking lot named Jose's Crab Shack. By then, the police had already sent alerts to all units about Wade and his car. One of the officers in the parking lot recognized Wade's vehicle and approached. The officer saw Wade sitting in the car, shirtless. The officer told him that he was being arrested for the earlier attack on Mila. Wade relaxed, thinking the police didn't know about the murders of Diane and Kristine. The officer's body camera was recording the entire encounter, so we can see Wade's face and hear the officer telling him to stay calm while they waited for backup to arrive.
Did you follow, or did you continue to follow him?
I did for a short period of time
Okay. Why did you stop?
because of the time of day and the amount of traffic on the road. It was around lunchtime. It's somewhere there near lunchtime, and the amount of people on the road. At the time, I only had a non-pursuitable offense.
Right now, Wade was no longer just a person, he had become a wild animal. The police officer noticed something strange about Wade's behavior and asked him to hand over the keys. Wade simply said, "Goodbye, bro. See you later." The unfortunate part was that the officer didn't know the severity of Wade's crimes. He had only been informed that there was a fight earlier that morning and they were looking for Wade. The officer didn't think Wade's crimes were that serious, and he considered that if he got into his car and chased Wade, it could lead to an accident that would put innocent people's lives at risk. So he decided not to pursue Wade this time. He went into a copy shop owned by a guy named Josh, who Wade knew but was not close friends with. He entered the shop looking extremely anxious and said he needed help. Josh noticed Wade looked disheveled. He wasn't wearing shoes or a shirt and had lost some teeth in the fight. Wade asked Josh for a bus or plane ticket to get out of town. When Josh didn't seem to grasp the urgency of the situation and kept telling Wade to calm down, Wade finally confessed, "I killed someone last night." They tried to persuade him to see a therapist, but Wade resisted. Josh, still trying to stay calm, said he would go to the back of the shop to use the phone and call someone who could help. But when he went to the back and made the call, he turned around to find that Wade had already escaped. This time, Wade fled on foot because he knew everyone was looking for his car, and if he used it to escape, he would be caught much sooner.
Wilson, could you please describe for us what he was wearing at that time?
He was wearing sweatpants only, no shoes, no shirt. He was bloody, and he was missing a couple of teeth.
Could you please describe for ladies and gentlemen jury what his demeanor was?
His demeanor was frantic, in a rush to leave as quickly as he could, because he had just done something horrific and killed people.
When he was speaking to you and asking you for your assistance, did that give you any cause for concern?
Not right away. And once I took a look at him again, I started to believe what he was saying.
And what exactly was he saying to you?
He said he killed people, and he rolled up someone in a carpet or bedding or whatever it was, and that he also needed to get out of town. He needed a plane ticket and a bus ticket or anything he could.
When the police arrived at Josh's shop, they found Christian's car parked outside, filled with blood. They were hesitant to open the trunk because they feared they might find a body inside. Desperate, the Wilsons invoked the Baker Act for involuntary institutionalization. At this stage, they tracked the car to find out who it belonged to, and that's when they discovered the car was registered to Christian. The police kept trying to call Christian, but unfortunately he had been murdered and wasn't answering. They then contacted Stephanie, Christian's close friend, who said she last saw him that morning with a stranger named Junior, whom they had met the night before at a bar. This worried the police as they realized that Christian's car hadn't just been stolen. They quickly headed to Christian's house and sadly found his body inside. At this point, Wade became a suspect in the murder. To escape the law, Wade started breaking into people's homes to find a place to hide. He chose a random house and tried to get inside, but he couldn't unlock any doors. So he went into the garage, found an unlocked car, and even peed in the cup holder before fleeing the scene. When the homeowner returned, he discovered someone had been in his garage and had peed in his car. Wade then moved on to another random house, which fortunately was empty because the owner was on vacation. He managed to enter through a window and thought, "Finally, I can rest for a few hours." He took a shower, changed into the homeowner's clothes, and sat on the couch with his feet on the coffee table, enjoying popcorn and drink White Claw he found in the fridge. After resting, he called Stephen's biological father, sounding very anxious and filled with adrenaline. He told his dad he needed help, saying, "I did something last night that I can't take back. 2 people are gone from this earth, and they're not coming back. I'm a killer." His dad responded, "Okay, where is this story coming from?" When Wade insisted that he really killed 2 people, he began to detail the murders of Christian and Diane. It seemed like he was excited, almost expecting his father to be proud of him. However, Stephen's dad was terrified by what he heard and asked, "Why did you do this?" Wade replied, "I don't know, I just wanted to." Stephen's father, in shock, said, "He became increasingly isolated from his family, preferring the company of his fellow drug users." "Okay, I can help you. I'm your dad, and I'll help you. Where are you?" Wade sent his location to Stephen, who then called the police.
The first time he said he needed help, he had done something that he couldn't take back.
Did he indicate that he and his girl had gotten into an argument?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was his girl that you were aware of at the time?
I just knew her as Mila.
They arrived at the house where Wade had been hiding and broke down the door. After they arrested him, Wade told the police that he would only confess and talk to them if they brought him a burger and fries. Once they got the food, he confessed to everything. Now the police knew he had killed 2 people, with Christian being the first victim, but they didn't know who the second victim was. Wade didn't mention Diane's name, and the police hadn't been able to identify her yet. Because of this, they couldn't search for her body to find out her identity. They started investigating and discovered that a woman named Diane Ruiz had been reported missing on the same day and in the same area where Wade had been. They connected the dots and concluded that there was a 99% chance that Diane Ruiz was Wade's second victim. The police searched for Diane's body for 3 days until on the 3rd day they spotted a buzzard flying over a wooded area nearby. They searched the area and eventually found Diane's body. Now Wade was facing charges for assaulting Mila, killing Christian, and the DNA found at the crime scenes of both murders, with multiple witnesses against him. Fast forward to October 2019, when Wade was arrested. It would take 5 years for his trial to occur, which was held in 2024. During this time, in 2020, the police prevented Wade from escaping from prison. It turned out that he and his cellmate had a long-planned escape route, even coordinating with a driver to pick them up at 2 a.m. Someone reported the plan to the police, who went to their cell and discovered that they had been trying to remove the bars from the window and were even attempting to break the glass. At this point, Wade started rambling nonsense as he tried to take back his earlier confession. He told the police that he had been working for a human trafficking ring, but he left because they were angry with him and wanted to pin the murders on him to eliminate him. Then they discovered that Wade was selling drugs in prison, which added to his charges. He joined a group of white supremacists who believed that their race was superior and followed dangerous ideologies that originated in Germany. After joining this group, Wade added more tattoos to his body, including one on his face and neck. He thinks he's the Joker, and even got a tattoo of it above his eyebrow that says, "Why so serious?" Chelsea smile, a term for a gruesome smile created by cutting the mouth from ear to ear. This smile made it look like the person was always grinning. Wade's lawyer advised him to cover up the tattoos for court, but Wade responded that makeup wouldn't hide them. The lawyer then suggested not to cover them, and to use them to argue that Wade was insane. The trial for Wade Wilson began on June 10, 2024, and lasted 5 days. He invoked the Fifth Amendment and refused to speak in court. However, many witnesses testified, including Mila and his father, Stephen. The jury was tasked with deciding between the death penalty or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Ultimately, 9 jurors voted for the death penalty. In Florida, a law states that if 8 out of 12 jurors agree on a sentence, it is accepted. Therefore, another trial was set to determine his sentence. During this time, Wade became a social media celebrity on TikTok, with fans creating pages dedicated to him. Many claimed he was innocent and campaigned for his release, gathering 30,000 votes in his favor. Some fan pages even contacted him in prison to learn more about him. When asked about the most romantic place he had been, he humorously replied, "The sea," thanking his fans for their support and motivation. Finally, on August 27th, Wade Wilson received his final sentence, 2 death penalties, 1 for each murder.